Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for allowing me just to get my cup of tea and to get a little bit of liquid in my throat. So module 3, websites versus platforms. What we'll discuss in this module is what platforms are best for my product, how easy is it to get onto these platforms, and once online, what do we need to do? What platforms are best for your products? Well, this is really, really tricky because obviously I don't know your products. But there are just so many ways what you should to think about this is that, and we'll go through all the differences and some of my ideas and observations and some of the pitfalls I think to look out at. So you have general massive big platforms, the Tmalls, the JDs. You have specialty ones. So depending if you're in health and beauty, if you're in pet care, you could be in wine, or you can go on to specialty websites or platforms. There are also regional ones, and I know I've come across this, that you might have a province or a region, might have 200, 300, 400 million people in the province. The Chamber of Commerce wants to encourage companies within this province and they have their own websites and logistics. So again, your own Chamber of Commerce might have have events on with regional provinces that will have regional companies, and that's something to look at. And we'll go into a little bit more detail because I think that's an opportunity for a lot of brands that they overlook. And they want to go on to the national ones and they want to go into the Shanghai and Beijing, but there is a lot of opportunity on regional platforms. And the scale, remember, the scale is just so big in some of these regional platforms. And also too is that a lot of these Chinese mega apps have both a kind of a domestic and a global platform. So again, there's different requirements to go on. So it really depends on your product. It depends on your strategy. It depends on your budget, to be frank. But I would always sort of side in the air of caution is start small, because you will make mistakes. You need to localize your content. And as you grow and get comfortable with China, then you can grow onto the larger platforms. And I just wanted to put this slide up because, again, depending on your interaction with China, you probably have never seen pretty much most of these apps. Again, because of the firewall and the closed system. So you obviously have Didi, which is Uber. You have Alipay, which is the payment. You have WeChat. I'm sure you must have all have heard of WeChat, but WeChat is the absolute super app of China. And it does absolutely everything. And just there's no Western brand or no Western app that comes near what it does. And every year it just gets bigger, and it's just huge. And then obviously you've got the different NetEase, Taobao, all the different, and these are even some of the smaller sort of shopping sites. So that's just kind of a look, and you can just see the figures there. That's just something in a quick 60 seconds, you can see the amount of value of purchases, like nearly 1,883,000 in 60 seconds on Taobao. It's just phenomenal. That you can look at your leisure. But the very interesting, sorry, went down the bottom. Pinduoduo, I think was only set up on about 2016, and it's already an absolute behemoth. It's probably the fourth biggest shopping platform in China, and that's their whole kind of USP is selling bulk, selling cases of things rather than units of things, and selling group buying. So 10 friends might get together, and if they reach a certain level of purchase, they get peanuts. They get a pack of peanuts or a box of peanuts into them. And that's the kind of USP. But this is a great slide just to look at, just to show the sheer difference and the scale of the China market in 60 seconds. Now, this is really interesting slide in that this is what we talk about a platform and the kind of what's behind it. So Baidu is the search engine. But it's got a huge amount of other products, even e-commerce built into it. And then you've got Alibaba, which is Alipay and Tmall and Taobao. and it's also got a link into Weibo. And then you've got Tencent, which is WeChat and WePay. They've also got, health, fitness, finance, and so does Alipay, which is really interesting too, because they're collecting so much data. They're so integrated. So they've got the app, they've got the social media, they've got payments, logistics, marketing. Alibaba then has a controlling share on, like Tencent has on bike sharing. And then they're able to track you on your fitness. And then they have financial products that are based off your activity levels, are able to encourage you to take out health insurance and life assurance based on your fitness tracker, based on the ride sharing that you take, all built around the app so this is where data is going, and they're really, really brilliant at using the data. But what you also have to realize too is that these are all kind of nearly silos within their own right, these powerhouses. So that if you're on WeChat, Weibo, for instance, it's difficult to pay with using WePay. They want you to pay by Alipay. Now you can do it, but there's just extra layers. So most Chinese consumers would have Alipay and WePay. They'd have both. So these big powerhouses try to control your whole ecosystem. But by keeping control of all of the pieces, from logistics to marketing to payment to the social media to content, is that they're able to make it really efficient and really, really simple for you to share and move around them. So this is what it's totally different to the European market too, is that there's these three big powerhouses, and you as a brand have to kind of decide which one you're going to go into, because you will be slightly restricted depending on which ones that you decide to go into. But you can go into both. You go into them all. So here you have Tmall on the left. So I've circled kind of the difference, because the Tmall is part of Alibaba Group, and it's huge. It's an absolute behemoth of a brand, but they've got a Western Tmall Global and a Tmall Domestic, and we'll look at some slides later on. And then you have JD, which is the second biggest. And again, you may or may not know or have heard of Singles Day. Singles Day is 10, 11 years old. It used to be a student movement and a student kind of day that they conspicuous consumption, where if you didn't get a Valentine's, that you'd maybe buy for yourself, and it was a treat for yourself. And Jack Ma thought this was a great idea, and he brought it into the online sphere back in about 10 years ago, and it's turned into an absolute juggernaut. The exact figure, so this is a one-day sales event held on the 11th of November. So 11/11/11/11 Singles Day, and it's all about buying for yourself. Now, I don't have the exact figures for last year, but in the round, Alibaba, one day, just sales for one day, were $34 billion US, and JD was 25, 26, maybe even a bit more, 27 billion US. That's sales for one day, one company, or two companies. So it's just phenomenal figures. Nearly 60 billion across two companies, sales in one day. Again, it goes back to scale. So this is the power of these huge, big, mega platforms. Now, so how difficult is it to go onto these platforms? It's tremendously difficult, in my opinion. So I've been talking to Alibaba for so long to try to set up an Irish store. And also I've been trying to get brands to go on to Tmall. And yes, it's absolutely possible to do, but you need to be conscious of a couple of things. The first thing is that I'll start with the expense, is that the Tmall JD, they don't really like talking to Western brands directly. What they like to do is they like talking to an agent. So they will expect you to have an online TP or an agent, a trade partner. So while you do have control of the content, you do have to put all the content through this TP partner. This TP partner obviously takes a cut. And then if you want to promote on these platforms, first of all, if you want to get listed on these platforms, you have to apply and you have to be within you have to be accepted. They're not taking applications in the baby formula and some of the baby product ranges. So, and if they have too much products within certain categories, even if you have the best product, the best Hungarian product, it's the best in Central Eastern Asia, it don't matter. If there's too much competition, they won't take you. Then if you are allowed join, you're going to have to pay 200,000 to 400,000 RMB as a fee to join. You then are going to have to put a security deposit down. And this is really interesting. You'll find this on a lot of the websites, and it's something to be aware about. And I've come across a couple of brands that this has happened to. So you have to put down up to $20,000 security deposit. And this comes down to customers are king. If a customer has any issue with the product, the platform will automatically give them a full refund. You as the brand most likely will have no idea of this refund. And I've come across a few brands that after 3 to 4 months, maybe 6 months, are selling online on Tmall, and suddenly their account is closed. And they have to go onto their TP and find why is their account closed. And they suddenly find out that their $20,000 deposit has been used up. And they said, what 20,000? What do you mean? And they had no idea that there might have been a product fault or a customer issue, loads of customer issues, and the platform will just do deposit after deposit or refund after refund. Suddenly the deposit's gone, the account is blocked. And the brand has no idea of the brand issues. It could be a fault with the product. It could be whatever. So this is something that you have to be super careful about, is the deposit and how close you are to your TP. Obviously, then you have to market, and you will have to spend, and you'll have to not only do you have to then buy advertising space, but you then have to get the TP to design it, and then there's a percentage of the sales. So when we started looking at all these layers of cost, when we were bringing brands to Tmall, we were going, we honestly don't see a huge amount of revenue, a huge amount of margin, because it's all just been taken away. And I have talked to 2 large retail chains, one in Finland, the K Group, the Kesko Group, and one in Ireland called SuperValue. And they have said to me that they're making pretty much no money on sales, but they have to be there because all of their competitors are there. So it's just something to be aware of, is that these platforms are brilliant. They will get you great sales. You will have to engage with them through a TP partner. You won't be able to talk direct, but really, really, really look at your bottom line. Run the figures before you actually commit to some of the big Tmall and JD. Because from my experience of looking this in great detail, it's really, really hard to make money. It might be great sales, but when you strip out all of the costs, there's nothing in it. Because also too is that you have to do a huge amount of customization for these platforms. Now, this is another interesting thing, is that the content that you are going to have to provide is that the Chinese consumers, and I gave this just as a little illustration. So you have kind of Amazon.co.uk, roughly the scale of the information you'll have to down. If you go on to JD or Amazon.com or Tmall, the sheer amount of information that you will have to put on about that product is 3 times more than you have on your existing website. They will want to know everything about your brand. And when we went on to Tmall first, I talked to you about the interaction with the customers. And there was pictures of myself and my business partner in Beijing, and we had our register office in Dublin, and we had our warehouse in Shanghai in the free trade zone. And we must have had 20, 30, 40 customers at the start going on and looking at us and having pictures of us and questioning, why do we have an office? Why was that picture taken in Beijing when your warehouse is in Shanghai? And I was thinking to myself, when would any person in the West look at a website of the owners and look at the picture of where they were and then decide to email the website or message the website to find out about the owners in the picture? And it's just the sheer amount of detail, because there are so many counterfeit products. And Taobao, it was renowned for that. Now, to be honest, to be fair, some of these big platforms, the JDs and Tmalls, they're very, very good at only working with the brands. But back on some of the lower tiered websites and Taobao in the day, is that there was so much counterfeit going on that the Chinese consumer demands so much information. So it's just something to bear in mind. And also too is that just remember, sort of, if you're selling in your domestic market, you know, you might be number one, you might be number two, there might be 3, 4, 5 different competitors. Across the greater Europe, there might be 50, 70, 80 different competitors within your particular product range. But when you go to China, there's going to be 1,000+ competitors from all over the world. And the Chinese are being bombarded with, you know, so many products from all over the world. So your jam, your sauce, you know, your wine is going to have a really good USP. It's going to have great content. It's going to have a real brand story. So this is why the kind of, I can't overemphasize, you know, China is hard to get into. If you crack it, it's great, but you have to have a huge amount of content and put that time and effort and resource into it if you're going to do it correctly. The other thing to understand too is that they have completely different shopping days to us. You know, Christmas is not really a big shopping event. It's you know, you'll see big Christmas trees and all the rest to it, but as a shopping event goes, it's not particularly big. Chinese New Year is the big shopping time. And then you obviously have Singles Day, we talked about before, 11/11. And then we have the 18/6, the mid-season festival. So again, you know, it's totally different shopping days that you, if you're selling online, have to be aware of. Now, the other, localization too. So you then might have great products, and you might have a range of products. And I give it, but Crisps is an example that of a Estonian company I was working with, and they had a range of about 11 different flavors. But when they were bringing all of the range over, but they knew what from their sales in Europe that these products, this particular 3 were the best, and they brought them over to a trade show, and they brought the rest of the products over. But the 3 that they thought were going to be the top sellers were not the top sellers, because they were too, they didn't have enough salt. They were too sweet. And again, with chocolates, again, we were working with a Finnish brand, and there was a kind of a darker chocolate and a sweeter chocolate. And again, the Finnish company wanted to push the sweeter chocolate, but it was actually the darker one that was more of interest to the Chinese consumers. So again, you have to be conscious of the localization and how trends can be picked up on, even though they mightn't be what you had initially anticipated. And I'm just going to play this quick little video here of brands that I'm sure never anticipated this trend. So this is, I have seen so many kind of, mainly girls actually, sort of 18 to 30-year-olds. And this is really kind of Instagrammable or Weibo. They go out, they go into supermarkets, get the little miniatures, get their little fruit juice, and go off and sit down somewhere nice and take a picture of them drinking their little cocktail. And it's just a localization that I don't know whether Absolute or any of the brands know about. I'm sure they do. But this is something that your brand can be taken in a different way, and you sometimes need to go with it. And also too is that the flavors or the range that you might have might not be the ones that they might not be the ones that the Chinese consumers take to. So again, be flexible, do your research, go to the trade fairs and try these products out and get feedback from it. Just before we start the next one, I'll probably just give another example of this. Is that one of the supermarket chains that we were doing is that they had a range of about 60 different breakfast items, own brand breakfast items, and they were selling 15 of these on Tmall. They had a global Tmall store, but they wanted to know what were the next range of products that they should bring on to Tmall. And the TP was saying, well, you're the retailer, you should know. And so the company came to us and said, is there a way that you can do some market research before we launched the product? So what we did was that we got hampers of the products. We brought them out to China. We got them sent out to China. We organized for 10 KOLs, we had 10 influencers to organize breakfast morning and invite 10 of their friends. And what we did then is that we had certain, the influencer then had to do tasting sessions. They had to then take pictures. They had to then give advice on what they pay for the goods. Did they like them? Did they not like them? And we fed all of this information of 100 people and 10 KOLs back to the retailer. And they were able to decide then of what products to go onto Tmall next. But the great thing was is that they already had content. They had localized content from these breakfast mornings. So it's just a way of, you know, kind of linking in your pre-analysis, of doing the test before you go to market, rather than going to market and finding out 6 months that this flavor doesn't work or something like that. So that's just a kind of a little trick that I would do. It's a very cost-effective way of doing it, but it might save 6 months of trial and error when you actually do launch your product into the market. Okay, so that module 4, the last module, is the cross-border e-commerce do's and don'ts. We look at some facts, pitfalls, a bit of case studies, and what your first step should be, a bit of the customs, logistics, and warehousing, and marketing and live streaming, and KOLs, key opinion leaders. So this is a great example of the do's and don'ts, or who got it right and who got it wrong. On the left, you got KFC and on McDonald's. And if you look at the menu, you could be anywhere. You could be in Hungary, you could be in America, you could be absolutely anywhere. It's standard burgers, fries, and a Coke. Now look at KFC. The only place you're going to get that menu is in China. And right from the early stages, KFC got it absolutely right. They went localization, 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 customization right from the get-go. So McDonald's now in China has 2,500 stores. KFC has 6,000. The target for KFC is to get to 15,000 stores in China by 2025. 2025. Okay, so that's how quick, that's how fast they're going to grow from 6,000 stores. Worldwide, McDonald's has 36,000 stores and KFC has 23, but it's going to surpass McDonald's within the next 5 to 7 years because of its China strategy. McDonald's, even after 20 years, has 5.6% of the market. KFC is still powering ahead 11.8. KFC just got it so right. And if you remember the very first video I showed you of the Alipay, that was in a KFC store. So not only are they customizing the menus, they're getting their social media right, but they're really engaging with all of the online, offline, and technology. And they've just really, really got it right. And this is a really good example of a success story. Now, I know they're huge, but it just shows you, if you do get it right and you do localize, you've got a great opportunity. Another great opportunity is Oreo. So Oreo, again, part of the Kraft group and absolute behemoth, massive in America and Europe and all this too, but they were floundering in in China around the 2010. Just couldn't get their sales up, and they had launched. But what they had classically just done is they said, we are Oreos, we're going to bring the same packs over and we're going to put them on the shelves. Okay, so what happened? Well, they just weren't selling. So they brought in a team and they completely rejuvenated. So what they did is that they reduced the pack sizes from 14 to 7. And this allowed sampling. Seems a really simple thing, but it wasn't just sampling kind of on a week in a store. They completely changed all of their case quantities and their production period. Going forward, it's still only 7. And reverse, they do 14 in boxes as a one-off, but their main product is the 7. They also reformulated it. Again, the Western Oreo was too sweet, so they had to reduce it. So they spent nearly 2 years redeveloping the formula to get it just right for the Chinese market. And then what they did is they introduced really cool local flavors. So they had birthday cake, mango and orange, and green tea. So again, this is another example of a brand that really got it. And they coined a phrase which I think is brilliant, and they called it GLOCAL. So it was a global brand going local. And this is just a little video of its most recent ad campaign that they did for, I think, just earlier in the year. Okay, what was amazing about that is that it hit so many touch points. It had the firecrackers, the fortune cookie, the food, the sharing, the dragon, the fireworks. It was just immensely sophisticated. And that's really, that isn't a big mega brand, I know, but it's just where you have to be thinking. If you're thinking of China and you're thinking seriously of China, you do need to think of the localization element of it. The other element, which is absolutely huge, and again, it took my head a little bit of time to get around this, is the power of KOLs, key opinion leaders, and live streaming as part of that. Now, we all know influencers, but just in China, they take it to a different level. So foreign brands really need to engage with this and really need to do it. And you can do it from your domestic market. I'm going to show you that later on. So it's just, I'm going to again play you another short video here of just the sheer scale of KOLs. So that is not an uncommon scene. You could be in a shopping mall and you might see an influencer with a whole bank of screens around her, and they would be going on to totally different channels. So you might have Bilibili, you might have, I can't remember all of the different channels, but there are so many different live streaming channels. Youku, and there's a tons amount of those, and that this one particular influencer will be just sending out constant messaging and sales back to a particular given channel. So again, it's huge business, and it's something that brands have to be very, very conscious about. Now, this is a great story too, is that Meng Hu was in January 20, she gave up her job for China Airways. She was an air hostess. Within 12 months, she has amassed 400 daily fans are following her live streaming. She is making, I think the last figure is that she's making 100,000 a month. And this is hot off the press. This is like, she's only just started 14 months ago. She just is live streaming all day, and now she has become an influencer in her own right, and brands are reaching out to her, and she obviously gets commission, but also she gets paid up front to live stream. In 2020, the live stream sales was 66 billion. And it's estimated to jump massively this year to 170 billion. So it's an absolutely phenomenally big market, and it's something that you have to be aware of. And again, this is just another small video just to show you just that, again, is that they have live streaming schools where you can actually go and learn how to sell the product.
来，把自己调到最美的那一刻，该拍美颜开美颜，该开瘦脸开瘦脸，该开大眼开大眼，快点调一个最美的状态。
抖音。
So it's very sophisticated. But just, you're looking at this probably going, my gosh, how do I do that? We're only a small brand. We don't have all those resources. I totally understand that, but I just wanted you to be aware of the scale of it and how important it is. but also too is that you actually can do it, and you mightn't realize that you can do it. And I also want to tell you that it's not all about just getting onto the big platforms. What you can do is you can go onto the more smaller platforms. You can go into the smaller cities, as I said, into the more regions that, mightn't be tier 1 or tier 2. They might be tier 3 cities, still might have 100, 200, 300 million people, living in the whole province, or 55 or 6 million people living in a city. You can also set up WeChat and Weibo from Europe. We have accounts, and we have a Chinese team, but again, it's all registered from Europe. And obviously, as I talked earlier, you can integrate Chinese payments into your existing warehouse, but if you into your existing web store. But if you are going to do that, you then do need to have some element of influencing and KOLs. And I'm just going to play this little video here. So. Okay, so what this was is that this was our own WeChat store, and an Irish-based Chinese girl who we just got to do videos of the product and to show how to order them. And we were using this then on Weibo and other social media platforms. So again, it's not as sophisticated. We did this back in 2016, 2017, and it's evolved tremendously since then. But I just want to show you, it's not about having, really expensive KOLs and having a whole team of people doing this. You can do it small, and you can play on the uniqueness and the smallness and the kind of the regionality that you are a great product from Hungary and you've got great heritage. So, think small is great, but just think localization and think how the Chinese would do it. That's really what I'm trying to say to you. And as I said, this is a cost-effective way of doing it. And you as the brand are in control at all time. So this is something that I can't overemphasize to you. Tier 3 opportunities. This is myself and my business partner, where we went to a tier 3 city called Taiyuan in the Shanxi province, has 5 million population. The owner of the pharmacy chain said, we were the first Western kind of business people to come and visit him. And he was so proud, and he took it around all the stores. But the amazing thing about this is that they had an app. Gutsi was the name of the app. And 2 million people downloaded this app, or had downloaded this app, and he had a live streaming channel that was, they had a famous person from the Shanxi province was did live streaming every day, and that they had sales hours 3 times a day, in the morning, the afternoon, and in the evening time. And it was just phenomenal, just the technology. He had robots in his stores that if you went in and asked for a product, the robot would bring you to the product on the shelf. So this was a tier 3 city. There was so little competition, and it was really, really great opportunity for Western brands to be able to go here. So again, what I'm saying to you is that don't necessarily think tier 1. Don't necessarily think that you have to go onto the big platforms. There are a load of opportunities in smaller cities or on different channels. And here's another brand that we were working with, Nordic Honey. And again, we were going into the gifting channel, and the gifting channel is huge in China. It's into the 50-60 billion at last count in 2020 size of the market. And again, it can be done through cross-border e-commerce. So you can do a one bulk into a free trade zone or into a particular company. And what this, so let's say you're a large company with 100, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 employees, and you want to give a gift. The company would give all of the kind of Chinese ID to this gifting channel, and they would associate each person, a person in the office to a product, and it's sent out to them, and it's all done through cross-border e-commerce. So it's a really good, simple way. And I, to be fair, haven't come across an awful lot of European brands that are doing this, but it's just a channel that if your type of product is a more gifted product, like you can see the Nordic honey, it's a very pretty gifted product. This is a really, really interesting way that I think that depending on your products, this could be an opportunity to utilize cross-border e-commerce, but to do it in a kind of unique and different way. And that really is it. I don't know if I've lashed through that or I've gone too quickly, but maybe you'll tell me, Laura, if there's any questions specific to that.
No, we are perfectly on time, Philip, and we have the Q&A session right now. And actually, we have quite some questions that have been sent through the Q&A section. Sure. So perhaps I will just read them to you. Some of them are actually related to the first topics, but we stopped. The first of them is it possible to sell with cross-border e-commerce to final business customer B2B?
Yes, you can. You can do B2B2C, but the product has to go into a bonded warehouse, and that company has to have a bonded warehouse, and then it has to go to the final consumer. So it can go B2B2C, but okay. So each Chinese consumer, when they're ordering cross-border e-commerce, they have to give their Chinese ID. And there is a yearly limit of what a Chinese consumer can buy cross-border e-commerce. So you just have to be aware of that. That's why this is specifically meant to be a B2C for domestic consumption. As I said, you can do B2B2C, but there is limitations of what each Chinese person can buy. There's a monetary limit of what the Chinese person can buy cross-border e-commerce.
Thank you very much, Philip. Are the warehouses expensive in China? What's what is the average price?
No, that's the amazing thing too about the distribution logistics in China. It's super cheap. I mean, it's just phenomenally cheap. We're very lucky in the provider that we use in our warehouse is that we actually don't pay any warehouse charges until the product is actually bought by a consumer.
Thank you very much. Do you have any idea on the average price that this could mean for companies?
The warehousing?
Yes, correct.
Again, it depends, and I'm not being. It depends on how much space you're taking. Is there chilled or frozen requirements? Is it temperature sensitive? Are you going to be looking for a nationwide distribution, or are you going to be just localizing it? So again, in the Taiwan, the warehousing. Interesting enough, the Taiwan is that. There was no free trade zone in Taiwan, in that tier 3 city. There is one now, but when we initially set up, there wasn't, and we had to do all the logistics from Shanghai, which was a bit complicated. So the warehouse costings will depend, I suppose, how far your market is from your warehouse and how much stock and if there's a cold chain required.
Understood. Thank you very much. To sell supplements and vitamins on shelf in China mainland, do you have to register with the FDA? Is it the same in Hong Kong?
No. Again, unless there's new changes being brought in the last 6 months, no, you don't. Cross-border e-commerce. Again, this is the beauty of cross-border e-commerce. It's like selling your domestic product into the Chinese market. As I said, there are, depending on the ingredients. Like I said, Stemmerol was one of the products we had an issue with, but in vitamins, we have worked with Irish Vitamins, and vitamins are huge actually and supplements are a very, very big market in the Chinese, and cross-border there's not as much restrictions on them. No.
Perfect. For a shop on WeChat, are the same regulations applicable as on the other platforms? Are also the product on the whitelist?
If your product is on the whitelist, you can sell on any platform in China. You can sell cross-border e-commerce. So if you're on that list, you can sell on any platform.
Okay.
Just on that, sorry.
Yeah.
But the platform might have too many products within a category, say infant formula. So if there was a Hungarian infant formula that wanted to get on to Tmall, they probably couldn't get on, because there's too many infant formulas, and they probably wouldn't be invited or accepted on. So even though you're approved to sell by the Chinese government, the platform mightn't want the product, if that makes sense.
Understood. What kind of business license should have the Chinese company that takes the responsibility of importing goods through cross-border e-commerce?
Well, as I said, is that if you're doing a cross-border e-commerce, you don't have to have an agent. You can do it all yourself. You will most likely have to have a warehouse, and you can very simply find companies that will do warehousing for you, but they won't be necessarily your agent. They will just be your warehouse host and might look after your logistics. But you, as the brand, will have ownership of the product, and so you, as I said, you don't have to have an agent if you're selling cross-border e-commerce.
Okay, and perhaps we can add a couple of more questions until.
Sure. That's what the question and answer session's for.
Okay, what is the name of the gifting channel?
I will have to. Let me see. I just don't have it to hand. It's in Chinese, but I can have. Let me just make a note of that to get back to you on that.
Great, no problem. I know who brought the question, so I can just reply to her afterwards.
But it's a really interesting one. I worked with that Nordic Honey and two other Estonian brands, and I think it's a great, if your product's right for the gifting channel, I think it's a super little channel to look at, because not a lot of people are looking at that.
Great. And perhaps we can fit a last one. Remember that we have another Q&A session just right before the end of the webinar, so we will continue answering questions there. But perhaps the last in this blog would be, how effective are email campaigns? Yeah,
good question. Email really, while it's used in China, it's not really. QQ is the big kind of email. Email, like if you send a business email, you will get a reply maybe in a week, but it's or you might not at all. It's really, if you want to reach real consumers in China, you need to be on kind of WeChat or Weibo. So I'd say email campaigns are pretty much irrelevant in my experience in China.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Felin. I think we can let you take a rest for a minute.